A woman stands in a quiet room, holding a sweater that hasn't been worn in months. It still smells like him, faint cologne, soap, something warm and familiar. She closes her eyes, her breath catches, and just for a moment he's there again. Not in flesh, not in voice, but in something stranger. Sensation, presence, a flicker of memory so vivid it feels real. He is gone, and yet, not entirely. This is the mystery that lingers long after loss. Where do people go when they disappear from your life, but not from your mind, not their physical selves? We understand what happens to that. But their laugh, their scent, their rhythm in a room, their way of saying your name, these things don't vanish with the body. They echo, they return suddenly and inexplicably through smell, through music, through the way sunlight hits a wall. Why? This question sits at the crossroads of science and soul. How can someone feel so present in the absence of their body? What exactly is memory, and why does it sometimes resurrect more than it remembers? Most of us think of memory as a filing system, a cold archive of dates, facts, and images. But the brain doesn't store people like files. It rebuilds them through networks of sensation, emotion, movement, and even smell. Memory is not passive recall. It is active reconstruction, a resurrection machine built from neurons, hormones, and time. So when a familiar scent sends your heart racing, when an old photo seems to pulse with life, when a dream brings back a voice long silenced, something deeper is happening, something biological. The people we've loved don't just vanish. Their patterns are etched into us, into neural pathways, chemical reactions, and cellular rhythms. And somehow the brain can conjure their presence from absence, not metaphorically, but physiologically. This is the quiet science of remembering, not just facts, but feelings. And it may be one of the most extraordinary abilities of the human mind, to bring someone back, if only for a moment, through nothing but a smell and a spark. From the dawn of recorded history, humans have understood memory not as biology, but as something closer to the soul. In ancient Egypt, when the dead were judged in the afterlife, it wasn't their brain that held meaning, it was their heart. The brain, curiously, was often discarded. The heart, believed to carry memory, identity, and truth, was weighed against a feather to determine one's fate. Centuries later, Plato would echo a similar idea, that memory is not just recollection of events, but a kind of spiritual remembering, fragments of a past life re-emerging into the present. And in the 1800s, long before neuroscience, practitioners of phrenology believed memory could be felt on the skull, measured in the bumps of bone. These efforts seem primitive now, even misguided, but they point to a timeless curiosity. Where is memory kept? What does it mean to remember? By the early 20th century, scientists like Vladimir Bekhterev began to move memory from mysticism into measurable biology. Using electrical stimulation and autopsy observations, he tried to map associative memory to specific brain regions. But even today, after a century of neuroscience, the answer remains elusive. We know now that memory is not located in a single spot. It is distributed. It's not stored like a file in a cabinet, but woven into patterns of connection across the brain. The hippocampus, amygdala, prefrontal cortex, and default mode network all play roles, but no single one is memory. Memory is a relationship between neurons, a choreography, a dance that reassembles past experience into present awareness. And yet, this modern understanding hasn't erased the wonder, it's deepened it. Consider the paradoxes we now face. Why do people with Alzheimer's lose names but still sing childhood songs with perfect pitch? Why does grief return not through thought, but through smell, weather, or the taste of a specific meal? Why can one moment, a look, a sound, bring back someone long gone with breathtaking clarity? These are not just emotional curiosities, they are questions of biology. The answers lie in how memory is constructed, because memory is not a recording, it is a recreation. Each time we remember, the brain reactivates patterns, like a jazz musician improvising a familiar tune. It's never exactly the same, because the circuitry has changed, because you have changed. But it feels true. That's the miracle. Every memory is a neural performance, firing, refiring, adapting, And this reconstruction isn't just cognitive, it's sensory, emotional, somatic. Memory includes the rush of hormone, the pattern of breath, the beat of the heart in that original moment. This is what makes memory both fragile and powerful. It can blur, it can distort, but it can also resurrect. The brain doesn't just recall, it relives, which means that when a song brings someone back, when a scent makes your chest tighten, when a place feels haunted by a voice that no longer speaks, it's not nostalgia, it's neurology. A living memory circuit has reactivated, just long enough for you to feel them again. And in an aging world with dementia on the rise, this understanding carries urgency. How do we preserve identity when memory begins to fragment? What does it mean to be you when the neural web begins to fray? These aren't philosophical musings anymore. They're clinical, personal, societal. The science of memory isn't just about facts. It's about presence. It's about how the people we love, the lives we live, and the selves we carry forward continue to shape us, even after they're gone. Every time we remember someone, we believe we're summoning them as they were, preserving them, honoring them, keeping them intact in our minds. But neuroscience tells a different story. In a revelation that shook the foundation of memory research, scientists discovered that memory is not a fixed archive. It's a living, dynamic process. Each time a memory is recalled, it briefly becomes unstable, like a photograph dipped in water. During this window of fragility, the memory can be altered by emotion, by context, by suggestion, before it is saved again. This process is called memory reconsolidation, and it means that to remember is also, inevitably, to rewrite. In 2004, a landmark study from Joseph Ledoux's lab demonstrated this phenomenon with remarkable clarity. The team showed that when a memory is retrieved, it becomes temporarily vulnerable, requiring a biological restabilization process to be stored again. But here's the catch. During this period of instability, new information can be inserted. In other words, the act of remembering can subtly reshape the memory itself. This wasn't just theoretical. It overturned decades of belief that memories, once encoded, were like files stored away, untouched. Instead, they were more like clay, malleable each time we touched them. This scientific breakthrough raised an unsettling dilemma. When we remember someone we've lost, especially someone we revisit often, like a parent, a partner, a child, are we preserving them or slowly reinventing them? If the pitch of their laugh changes in our mind over the years, if the tilt of their smile softens or sharpens with time, is that grief painting the portrait? Or biology rewriting the data? For one grieving father, this question becomes quietly devastating. Every night, he closes his eyes and hears his daughter's laugh, crisp and bright. But months pass, then years, and one day, he realizes he's not sure anymore if that laugh is the right pitch. It's close, but something is off, and the realization shatters him. Has he forgotten her? Or has his brain, in its effort to hold on, slowly reshaped her into someone new? This is the paradox of memory in grief. It's our only bridge to the past, but it's also porous. It lets in air, time, erosion. The people we carry in our minds are never static. They evolve, not because we want them to, but because memory itself is a process of reconstruction. And so we find ourselves in a strange place, loving not only the person who once was, but the version of them our minds continue to recreate again and again with every recollection. The science is clear, but the emotion it reveals is something deeper. To remember is to rewrite, and perhaps to grieve is to learn to love those rewritten versions too. Memory, it turns out, is not a camera. It doesn't passively record the past, it actively reconstructs it. Each remembered moment is built anew from fragments stored across different brain regions. The hippocampus retrieves the where and when. The amygdala binds it with emotion. The prefrontal cortex, ever the editor, reshapes meaning in light of what you now know. You are not a vault of perfect recall. You are a narrator, a meaning maker. And that raises difficult questions. Because if memory is storytelling, what happens when the story changes? This has profound ethical and psychological implications. Take eyewitness testimony. Lives have been changed, even ruined, based on what people believed they saw. But neuroscience shows that those memories can be planted, shaped, or even entirely false. Elizabeth Loftus's landmark research in the 1980s demonstrated just how malleable human memory is. In her studies, participants could be led to vividly remember things that never happened. A spilled punch bowl, a lost child, a traumatic event. Her findings shattered the courtroom's confidence in the reliability of memory. Around the same time, the recovered memory movement emerged. Thousands of people began recalling traumatic childhood events under suggestive therapeutic conditions. Many were later shown to be false memories, the result of leading questions and emotional vulnerability. The damage was immense. And yet today, memory manipulation isn't just psychological, it's technological. In laboratories around the world, researchers are exploring ways to disrupt painful memories, particularly for people with PTSD. Drugs like propranolol are being used to dull the emotional intensity of recalled trauma. Virtual reality is being used to recontextualize fear responses. Some scientists are even experimenting with brain-computer interfaces, devices that read neural activity and attempt to reconstruct visual memories using artificial intelligence. One day, we may be able to download fragments of what someone once saw, heard, or felt. But what would that give us? A memory or a simulation? Could it ever capture your mother's laugh, your best friend's gaze? Or would it always be a digital shadow, lacking the body-tingling warmth of real connection? And if we could preserve a person in neural data, how long before we confuse the copy with the truth? How many times can we recall someone we've lost before they become a blend of biology and imagination? Grief magnifies these questions. We remember because we miss them, but every act of remembering reshapes them. Are we honoring who they were or inventing who we need them to be? If technology gives us the power to freeze a moment forever, would we take it? Or is the impermanence of memory, its ability to fade, soften, evolve, part of what makes it human? These rising conflicts sit at the edge of neuroscience, ethics, and emotion. They challenge our notions of truth, love, and identity. Because to remember someone is not simply to revisit the past, it's to remake it over and over until the story we carry becomes a version of them that only we will ever know. The most stunning revelation about memory is this: we don't actually remember people. We remember our relationship with them. The brain doesn't hold on to faces like photographs or voices like recordings. Instead, it stores patterns of connection between neurons, yes, but also between selves. When you remember someone, what your brain is truly reconstructing is the emotional map between who they were and who you were in their presence. You are not a passive observer of your memories. You are woven into them. This changes everything. It means that every memory of someone you've lost is also a reflection of who you were when they were in your life. When you remember the way they laughed at your jokes or how their eyes softened when they looked at you, you're not just remembering them. You're remembering the version of yourself who was loved that way, seen that way, understood that way. And when they're gone, that version of you goes with them. That is the hidden cost of grief. It's not just about losing someone you love. It's about losing the person you became in their presence. A mother remembers her child's tiny hand in hers, and beneath the ache is something deeper. The memory of who she was as a mother in that exact moment. Gentle, needed, whole. A man mourns his best friend, but he is also mourning the person he could be when he was with them. Unguarded, funny, free. These selves don't vanish entirely, but they dim. They no longer have the relational scaffolding that made them possible. Neuroscience now shows that memory is not about time, it's about attachment. The brain prioritizes emotionally significant memories, wiring them deeply into the circuitry of identity. That's why random facts disappear, but the sound of someone's voice can echo for decades. That's why trauma burns into the nervous system, and love, real, consistent love, can shape our very biology. What we grieve, then, isn't only the absence of another. We grieve the collapse of the space between us, the relational field, the bond, and with it, the part of ourselves that only existed inside that bond. This realization reframes grief entirely. It's not just sorrow for what was, it's disorientation in the present. Who am I, now that you are gone? What parts of me only existed in your eyes, your laughter, your presence? And how do I find those pieces again when the mirror has vanished? To lose someone is to lose a context. Memory tries to bring them back, but always through a lens shaped by who we are now. And the greater the love, the more profound the transformation. Because in the end, memory is not a vault of the past. It's the nervous system trying to hold on to meaning. And sometimes, that meaning is not just about who they were, it's about who we were together. Modern neuroscience has brought us closer than ever to understanding the architecture of memory, not just as a mental function, but as an emotional and relational force. We can now trace memory activation in real time using fMRI and EEG, watching how the brain reassembles moments from the past, like a kind of living collage. We know that the hippocampus plays a central role in mapping time, context, and sequence, allowing us to place memories in order, to know not just what happened, but when and where. Emotional memories, meanwhile, follow a different path. They are routed through the amygdala, which infuses them with intensity, urgency, and sometimes even a sense of danger. This emotional modulation explains why we remember heartbreak more vividly than test answers, and why a single scent can collapse decades into seconds. These insights have led to powerful breakthroughs. In trauma therapy, clinicians are now using the process of memory reconsolidation to help patients reshape the emotional charge of painful memories. Exposure therapy, once feared for re-triggering trauma, is being refined with timing and neurochemical precision, helping patients revisit and recode their most difficult moments. In dementia care, music therapy has emerged as a remarkable tool. Familiar songs can awaken long-dormant memories, restore emotional recognition, and even re-establish lost connections between patients and their families. And in a growing number of grief studies, virtual reality is being used not as escape, but as ceremony, allowing people to simulate presence, to revisit places or faces, and to find words they never got to say. Yet beneath all these techniques is a deeper truth. Memory is not just about storing data, it's about sustaining bonds. The brain evolved to remember not merely events, but relationships. We are wired to track who we love, who we trust, who we've lost, and to keep those patterns active even after they're gone. This is not sentimentality, it's neurobiology. The act of remembering someone, especially someone we've lost, is not a passive gaze into the past. It is a biological continuation of connection. Whether through ritual, storytelling, smell, music, or photographs, we are constantly rebuilding the presence of those who are no longer with us. Not because we can't let go, but because letting go completely is neurologically impossible. What this tells us is profound. How we remember people shapes how we survive them. Memory becomes the bridge between absence and meaning, and through it, we carry not just images, but love, not just facts, but felt presence. We do not forget, we reform. In this light, memory becomes less of a vault and more of a practice, a daily act of stitching the past into the present, not to relive it, but to remain human in its wake. A child sits on a swing at dusk. The world around her is quiet, painted in amber light. The swing creaks gently as it sways, stirred by the breeze, or perhaps by something older. Years ago, someone she loved used to stand behind her, steadying the ropes, pushing with laughter, calling out. That voice is gone now. The hands that pushed are no longer there, but the rhythm remains. She closes her eyes, not to escape, but to return, not to the person exactly, but to the feeling, that calm, that safety, that fleeting sense of being entirely seen. The memory is not sharp. There's no clear face, no precise moment, just the swing, the wind, and a warmth that settles deep in her chest. Not a memory of the person, but of being loved by them. Maybe that's the point. Maybe memory isn't really about the past at all. Maybe it's what love becomes when the body can no longer hold it. When there are no more hands to reach for, no more eyes to meet across a room. Love doesn't vanish. It changes form. It becomes sensation, pattern, a breath of wind in a familiar rhythm, a shadow that makes your heart skip, a laugh you still hear, not in the air, but in the way you smile without knowing why. Perhaps the people we've lost aren't gone. Perhaps they are waiting, not to be remembered perfectly, not as they were in life, but as they made us feel. Their presence, translated through time into texture, into tone, into the shape we now carry in their absence. Because the brain isn't just a book of stories, it's a lantern in the dark. It lights the path we walk, even when we don't know it's there. Each memory is a flicker, subtle, imperfect, yet radiant. A glimmer of someone who once lit your world, and who in some way still does.